It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. I'm Samantha Washington. Coming up, the not-so-special relationship. Donald Trump renews his attacks on Sir Keir Starmer in an interview with Sky News. The president told Mark Stone that he likes the Prime Minister, but that he's made tragic mistakes on energy and immigration. It follows his anger at the PM over his decision not to join the war against Iran. And coming up, we'll assess the damage being done to UK-US relations and the importance of the King's visit to Washington in a fortnight's time. Also tonight, the BBC announces plans to cut up to 2,000 jobs. That's 10% of the corporation's workforce. Employees were informed on a call this afternoon, but were not given details of who will be affected. Plus, a symptom of a broken system. The government announces new digital ID for prisoners, as it's revealed 3 inmates are being freed by mistake every week. And who coughs up for the clean-up will visit the huge fly-tipping site that will cost £8 million to clear. There's all that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Now, it's a term first used by Winston Churchill more than 80 years ago. But tonight, there is a fresh strain on the special relationship. That's after Donald Trump renewed his attack on Sir Keir Starmer. Speaking to Sky News, the president said that he likes the Prime Minister, but that he's made tragic mistakes on energy and immigration. Well, the criticism follows his initial attack on Sir Keir Starmer for choosing not to get involved in the war against Iran. And the King's state visit to Washington in 2 weeks' time now looks like an opportunity, perhaps, for a desperately needed reset of UK-US relations. Well, we can bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who joins me now from Washington, and our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who is in Westminster. Mark, to you first, your telephone conversation with the president raises the question, really, about if that's a special relationship you wouldn't want to know what an unspecial one looks like.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. He described it as sad. In fact, when I raised or brought up the phrase special relationship, he said, with who? And I said, well, with the UK. I mean, I'm not suggesting that he doesn't know what the phrase is. Of course he does. He's used it himself before. But it was just striking that in the moment in that conversation, he had to be kind of reminded of it. And on that, he said, it's been better, but it's sad. And we gave them a good trade deal, better than I had to, which can always be changed. I thought that was a really interesting sort of dig that the president had, suggesting that this preferential trade arrangement that the UK has managed to get with the United States, that's kind of the envy of many other countries, that was carved out by British diplomats over many, many months, that could be changed. You know, it could change in a day, seemed to be what the president was suggesting. Why? Well, then we got onto that because he seems to be very unhappy with the direction of the UK energy policies, UK policies on immigration, and of course, Keir Starmer's principled, Starmer would say, view not to join what he believed was an illegal war in Iran. All of that has really angered the president. And on UK policies, he said to me, I love your country. I would love to see it succeed. But if you have bad immigration policies and bad energy policies, you have the worst of both. You can't succeed, not possible. So really stinging criticism there by the president of Britain's direction. And I pushed back at him as the conversation, which was about 5 minutes long, as it progressed. I pushed back at why he thinks he's got, why is it his position as American president to dictate how Britain and how Keir Starmer should run his country. And he said, well, it's not. But I just keep being told, basically, that Britain's going in the wrong direction. And so I think I should speak up for what I think. And on what he described as the Prime Minister's tragic mistakes, he said to me, I like Starmer, but I think he's made a tragic mistake in closing the North Sea oil. You see, your energy prices are the highest in the world. And I think he's made a tragic mistake on immigration. And on that, Sam, he kind of he applied what he sees as the challenges of immigration here in America, and used exactly the same phrases. You know, you've got illegal immigrants invading your border. Many of them are from mental institutions. Many of them are criminals. He applied that to the UK. He said that was happening in the UK, and I pushed back. I said, look, is that not just your own bit of fake news, Mr. President? And he said, well, look, I was right here. And then he pivoted back to America. The inference seemed to be, I was right on immigration here. You ought to listen to me over in the UK. So really interesting. But his pivot from the anger and the frustration with Starmer to his effusive praise for the King, well, that was striking too.
Well, Mark, it's 5 minutes of phone call that has fed the news machine all day today. How does one go about just ringing up the President of the United States?
It's a good question, I mean, it is literally his cell phone, as they say, his mobile phone. It's not the case that you kind of you make an arrangement to call him, go through the switchboard or whatever, and then end up speaking to him. There are actually a growing number of Washington-based correspondents who have got hold of his number. And he just picks up. So you literally call and hope, you know, look at his schedule, look at when he might not be doing anything or not in a meeting, and just call him. And he just left a meeting with the Chinese ambassador yesterday afternoon, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. So, you know, his number's in my phone, pressed call, and 2 rings, and he picked up. Hello, he said, and you want to be sure it's him, Mr. President. Yeah, what's up? He said, and then it was away. And it's important to point out that I said up front to him, I'm recording this call. I said, we spoke last week. I said, I'm recording this call. And he said, fine, but you're not broadcasting it. Do I have your word on that? And I said, yes. And he said, OK, what's up? And then we got recording it. And I think the fact, Sam, that it wasn't recorded, it wasn't broadcast, means that you get a slightly different president. He's not performing in a way that he does when the cameras are rolling, a way that we're used to. People often say in private he's a bit different, and I certainly sensed he was a bit different when I was suggesting that he was misinformed on Britain, that he's peddling a bit of his own fake news. Had the cameras been rolling, he'd have probably, you know, shot back at me in a performative way, but not in this call. And I think you got a slightly different President Trump.
Yeah, fascinating insight, Mark. Thank you. John Craig, now to you in Westminster. And the Prime Minister is not unaccustomed to being insulted by President Trump, is he? But now the threats to rip up the trade deal. How has all of that been received in Westminster?
Well, that bit was new, certainly. We're used to him criticising the British government's energy policy, North Sea policy, and also immigration. But now this threat to change to renegotiate the trade deal, well, that is new. Well, it was Prime Minister's questions, but it wasn't Kemi Badenoch that raised this phone call. It was Sir Ed Davey, probably the harshest critic of President Trump in the House of Commons. And my goodness, he didn't pull any punches today. This was the exchange.
In a phone call with Sky News last night, President Trump has threatened to rip up his trade deal with the UK as punishment for us not joining his idiotic war in Iran. Mr. Speaker, this must be the last straw. Surely the Prime Minister can't send our King to meet a man who treats our country like a mafia boss running a protection racket.
My position on the Iran war has been clear from the start. We're not going to get dragged into this war. It is not our war. And a lot of pressure has been applied to me to take a different course. And that pressure included what happened last night. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not going to yield. It is not in our national interest to join this war, and we will not do so. I know where I stand.
Well, Sir Ed Davey responded by saying, let's just hope that the President doesn't embarrass the King. It's noticeable just how much more serious Sir Keir's answers are to Sir Ed Davey than they are to Kemi Badenoch. Now, again, in his clash with Kemi Badenoch today, he got into trouble with the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. He's got into the habit of just hitting out at her policies rather than answering the question. The Speaker said, it's Prime Minister's questions, and told him to finish and called him on him to sit down and finish his answer. And at the end of Prime Minister's questions, there was what looked like a pretty animated clash between the Speaker and the Prime Minister as the PM was leaving the chamber. Clearly, relations between them are very bad. The Speaker's office tell us that they've had to talk to Number 10 a number of times about him dodging questions. And clearly, tonight, the Prime Minister's relations with the Speaker of the House of Commons are just as bad as they are with the President of the United States.
Yeah, lots of unspecial relationships. All right, John, thank you very much. Well, Lewis Lukens from Signum Global Advisors joins me now. He was Deputy Chief of Mission at the US Embassy in London during Trump's first term. A very good evening to you. I know that you will be a keen observer of UK-US relations because of your background. In terms of the new bit to all of this, I mean, it's been tense for a while. Do you think that the president will end up rescinding the trade deal?
I don't think so. Look, I think that was bluster on his part. I think he sees that as a tool that he can wield to try to pressure Keir Starmer. But at the end of the day, and I will say in the U.S. Congress, and we hear this from Republicans as well, there's very little appetite for the president to revisit some of these trade agreements. So I think that's bluster on his part. I don't think that the U.S.-UK trade agreement, such as it is at threat at the moment. Certainly not before the midterm elections. I think after the midterms, the things open wide up and the president will be probably even more unleashed or unhinged than he is now. But I think the trade agreement with the UK is safe for now.
Well, we'll see, won't we? How do you think the Prime Minister has conducted himself in light of the insults that have been coming his way?
Look, I think he's done what he's had to do. And let's not, neglect the fact that standing up to President Trump and opposing the war in Iran is good for Keir Starmer politically, right? I mean, it is President Trump is not popular in the United Kingdom right now. The war in Iran is certainly not popular. Keir Starmer is in a bit of survival mode, so he has to do that. He does that as a way to bolster his own political standing in the UK. And by the way, he's not alone in Europe in doing this. Many other European leaders are facing the wrath of Donald Trump, including most recently yesterday, the Prime Minister of Italy. So, who used to be quite close to the president. So I think European leaders are learning, and Keir Starmer put amongst those, that at the end of the day, you have to kind of go with your domestic political instincts and priorities because trying to please Donald Trump is a losing proposition.
Yeah, you could argue that they're learning the hard way. We know that President Trump is considerably softer in his views towards the king, towards the royal family here. The king's visit is going to be pretty key, isn't it? And I suppose we ought to remember that he is going on this visit to the United States at the request of the UK government.
Yeah, look, President Trump is clearly very fond of the royal family, of the traditions and the pomp and circumstance that come with that. He's clearly very excited about hosting the king and queen in a couple of weeks in Washington. And I think the king is a very, very effective diplomatic tool who is being deployed, I guess, in some ways by Keir Starmer to try to smooth things over with the United States. And I'm sure that the king will do a superb job of charming the President Trump when he visits.
What do you think are the key challenges for the king with this visit?
I think the king has to try to get President Trump to change his view of the United Kingdom. I mean, this notion, which is quite common on right-wing media right now, for example, that the UK has been overrun by immigrants and that it's unsafe to walk in the streets of London, that is a narrative that is taking hold in the right wing, and the president clearly sees that. And I think King Charles would do well to try to give President Trump somewhat of a reality check, saying, this is actually the situation in the UK right now. We're actually doing quite well, if that is the case, and sort of disabuse the president of some of the false notions, or as Mark says, sort of the fake news that he likes to repeat about the United Kingdom.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because prime ministers come and go, presidents come and go. How much long-term damage do you think may be done through the way the president is talking about the UK as a global partner amongst the the viewpoints of Americans?
There is potential for long-term damage. I'm sort of afraid to say that the special relationship that the president seemed a little bit, caught off guard by is built on several very important pillars: defense cooperation, intelligence sharing, working together on transnational issues, including crime and climate change. And the U.S. and the U.K. have been doing these things in partnership for decades, for many, many decades. But underpinning all of those pillars is trust. The UK and the United States have to be able to trust each other to keep a strong foundation for that special relationship. And I think what President Trump has done and has been doing in the way he talks about Keir Starmer, talks to Keir Starmer, the way he belittles aspects of the United Kingdom, I think undermines that sense of trust that underpins the relationship. And I think that is where, I think longer term, it'll be difficult it could be difficult to rebuild that relationship if the sense of trust disappears or vanishes.
Yeah. Do you think that the topic of the King's brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, will be raised? Because there's considerable pressure from Congress, isn't there, for him to go and testify?
I would imagine that the last thing that President Trump or the King want to talk about is that.
Really? Okay. And in terms of the Prime Minister's stance on the war in Iran, saying it's not our war, how long do you think he'll be able to maintain that position in face of pressure from the US administration?
Well, it depends a lot, I think, on what direction this war, this conflict goes in. I mean, there is, both sides are still talking. We're in the ceasefire right now, which will last for probably another 2 weeks or so. If both sides are able to negotiate some kind of longer ceasefire, I think the pressure diminishes on allies to join the military effort. If, however, the two sides are unable to reach an agreement and President Trump ends up ratcheting up the military pressure on Iran and up to it and including possibly sending U.S. troops into Iran, then I think the pressure really increases on the UK and on Keir Starmer to contribute more than they have been.
Do you think that this term special relationship, has it been overused?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think clearly it's been overused, but it does signify something. I mean, it is a special relationship, and whether you call it the indispensable relationship or special relationship, it is a relationship, as I said, that's built on these pillars that keep both of our countries very, very strong, and by the way, economically prosperous. One of the pillars I should have mentioned was the very strong and robust trading relationship between our two countries. And I think it is a unique relationship given shared history and culture and family ties and all the rest of it. And I think, it will endure after the Trump presidency. And I think it's had its rough patches before, including during the Reagan-Thatcher years. So, I don't think anyone should be writing off the special relationship at this point. But Donald Trump is certainly making it more difficult to navigate than it should be.
How many times have we said that? Lewis Lukens, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, the BBC is set to cut 2,000 jobs as it tries to reduce costs. It's the corporation's biggest downsize in 15 years. The announcement comes before the former top Google executive, Matt Britton, takes over as BBC Director General next month. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, reports.
In the last few years, the BBC has been under immense pressure to make savings. But after stripping every bit of fat from the bone, now comes the news employees had been dreading. A significant downsizing of staff, with 1 in 10 roles set to go. The corporation's interim Director General, Rodri Talfin-Davies, delivering the bad news. While staff were told bosses have no choice if they're to ensure the BBC's survival, it was still a bitter pill to swallow. Broadcasting union Bet2 among those criticising today's announcement.
Inevitably, there is going to be another huge impact, both inside the BBC, but across the whole of the creative industries. At a time when media consolidation is in the news every day, I think the BBC and a distinct UK voice is more important than ever.
The BBC employs about 21,500 people in the UK, and it's believed as many as 2,000 jobs are being cut. Those listening in told me it was a pretty bleak picture painted to staff at the meeting. Savage is how one insider described it, with another saying it feels almost like the Hunger Games. As a taxpayer-funded institution, the BBC has to prove it's providing the best value for money. But of course, when the licence fee began 80 years ago now, there was no competition. Now, in a vastly transformed media landscape flooded with choice, the number of households willing to pay for the BBC is declining. The challenges for the BBC are immense.
The interim Director General of the BBC, he struck a pretty sober, sombre tone. There is also concern that reducing headcount and stripping the BBC of experienced employees is actually leading to more mistakes, more errors on air, and may have contributed to some of the editorial crises that we've seen over the last year or so.
This comes just a month before former Google executive Matt Britton takes up the role of new Director General, with quite the challenge on his hands, winning over staff who are facing one of the most unsettling moments in the BBC's history. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, still to come on the UK tonight, the government promises an overhaul of the prison system as it's revealed that almost 200 inmates were freed in error in 1 year. We'll have all the details. Also ahead, the Health Secretary announces plans to tackle misogyny in the NHS. And who should cough up for the clean-up? We visit the illegal dumping site in Oxfordshire that will take £8 million of taxpayers' money to clean up.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
179 prisoners have been freed in error in England and Wales in the past year. The figure was revealed on the same day as a report into the release of the migrant sex offender Hadish Kibatu, who was freed from an Essex prison in October last year. Well, the Ministry of Justice says that it will now introduce biometric checks and digital ID for inmates in a bid to stop the accidental releases.
We asked
Dame Lynn Owens to look at this carefully. She has provided a 200-page report, 33 recommendations. I'm accepting all of those recommendations. And the thrust is that we have to move to a digital system. We will move to a biometric system so we can follow every prisoner from police contact through the criminal justice system. And of course that we will invest in moving from this paper-based system where errors are being made, often by junior staff, to a digitally based system over the next few years.
Well, Sky's national correspondent Tom Parmenter joins me now. Evening to you, Tom. The Justice Secretary says that he is pledging to cut these accidental releases down to zero. He's got his work cut out for him.
It is a national embarrassment. Prisoners on the run lost by a dysfunctional system. And the case that this report centred on, that of Hadush Kibatu, was quite staggering. A high-profile sex offender who was due to be deported, who was accidentally released from Chelmsford prison. And that prompted a manhunt that went on for a few days. It cost time and resources for the police, and we learnt today cost £72,000 to sort out. He was eventually deported back to Ethiopia, but within days last autumn, another sex offender was on the run. Brahim Kadur Sharif, an Algerian who was released by mistake from Wandsworth prison in South London. And you may remember we caught up with him just before his arrest in North London. You Brahim? No. No. They're looking for the guy who escaped from prison.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I wish you found him. I wish you found him.
Yeah.
It's him.
It's him there? Mate, are you Brahim?
I think
Yeah.
the guy you're looking for, he went to run away now with a line bike.
You think he's on a line bike?
Yes.
Okay.
He didn't rent it.
He did what? He didn't rent it, he just took it?
Yeah.
You Brahim?
I'm not Brahim, I'm Ryan Alali, bro.
Sorry?
My name is Ryan Alali.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you know Brahim?
Huh?
Do you know him?
Everyone knows him, is in news.
Okay.
At the moment, we're arresting you to prevent your disappearance from location and to prevent any further harm to individuals by your release.
They're literally just checking the photo.
Yeah. All right, sir, thank you.
Against the images that are online from the news appeals. Yes. Every police officer there that day could have been doing other duties, protecting London. Instead, they were sorting out this mess caused by the crisis within the prison service. Dame Lynn Owens has dissected it all. She's flagged dodgy data that probably underestimates the number of mistaken releases. She flagged ageing technology, the use of pen and paper in some circumstances around prisoner management, and also the fact that CCTV cameras in prisons do not record audio. They are some of her recommendations. The other key one is that victims within all this are just treated so badly. The family of the victim, the 14-year-old victim of Hadush Kibatu, had a 4-hour gap before they were informed of his release from Chelmsford prison. They found out via a clip of Hadush Kibatu on social media, and that really is at the heart of this, that victims are being badly let down, and that cannot continue. That was one of the 33 recommendations that this report makes, and the government has pledged to implement them all.
Tom, thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, work begins to remove waste from a giant illegal dump in Oxfordshire. But who should pay for the clean-up?
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problems. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The government has announced that senior midwife Donna Ockenden is going to lead a full independent review into maternity services in Sussex. A bereaved families group met with the Health Secretary today as they pushed for a full investigation into the NHS Trust. Liz Charlton, whose baby was stillborn, was among those who spoke to Wes Streeting. She says that she raised concerns with the hospital about her medical history, but was repeatedly ignored. Our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, reports.
I remember finding out that we'd reached a point that we'd never reached before. And I phoned my mum and dad and said, it's a miracle. The miracle that we've been praying for has happened.
When Liz finally fell pregnant, she thought her prayers had been answered. She'd already suffered through 6 miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy.
So we have a memory box where...
Liz says she went to great lengths to make Worthing hospital staff aware of her medical history. But repeatedly, they claimed not to know or did not act when she told them.
I said, you're not listening because the greatest risk to this pregnancy is if it's not a live birth. And they still failed me.
At 28 weeks, she became severely unwell.
When I arrived at the operating theatre, there was 30 people there. And they appeared was the consultant that had misdiagnosed me, as well as a senior consultant saying, we're going to deliver the baby. You need to agree to a hysterectomy. And I said, save the baby, don't save me. And then she was pronounced stillborn just before 9:20.
Dr. Maggie Davies, chief nurse at University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust, tells Sky News the loss of a baby is an unimaginable tragedy for any parent. And we offer our deepest condolences and sincere apologies to Hazel's family. Our priority is always to provide the best care. That means listening carefully, learning and making changes so that families today get the safest care possible. Now bereaved Sussex families have been given the answer they've been waiting for.
This review gives us hope that we will finally get the answers we have been seeking, not just for our own families, but for every family that has been affected.
Health Secretary Wes Streeting has agreed that senior midwife Donna Ockenden should chair a review into the trust.
Donna Ockenden's superpower, consistently across a number of reviews she has led, has been working with and building trust among a group of traumatised families who've suffered bereavement, harm, and just the most unimaginable suffering.
Liz says the review is an opportunity for change for the future so that other parents can avoid the same heartbreak and grief. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, the Health Secretary also announced plans today to tackle what he called outdated and misogynistic practices within the NHS. Wes Streeting said that female patients are routinely not listened to, taken seriously, or offered pain relief for invasive procedures. In a speech this morning, he acknowledged that women are treated like second-class citizens, and he promised sweeping changes.
Women were let down by the very people they put their care in. Being ignored, humiliated and disrespected are all too common experiences for far too many women using the NHS. More than 8 in 10 of you say there have been times when healthcare professionals didn't listen to you. In the NHS, money talks. So where better to start than with the patients who've been made to feel like second-class citizens whose voices don't matter. Giving women the power to kick the medical misogyny where it hurts in the bank balance will make difference. The mission is a simple one: to dismantle once and for all the culture and ingrained behaviours that allow medical misogyny and everyday sexism to fester and grow. The prize is a big one: shorter waits, fewer painful procedures, more control over your health, and more opportunities to take part in research that affects you. That work has already begun with our renewed women's health strategy, which promises a fairer, healthier future for women and girls everywhere.
Well, the Chief Executive of Endometriosis UK, Emma Cox, joins me now. Very good evening to you, Emma. Do you agree there is a culture of medical misogyny within the NHS?
Good evening, Samantha. Yes, I agree with what Wes Streeting was saying. And we know, sadly, from all those with endometriosis who wait on average 9 years, 4 months to get a diagnosis, that over 80% of them are not believed that their levels of pain, they're in pain, and they're often told it's in their head.
And it's astonishing, though, to hear a health secretary say that. What does it mean to you, and indeed to endometriosis sufferers, to hear those words come out of the health secretary's mouth?
It's sad that it has to, but I'm absolutely delighted. And, it feels like that the whole of the Department of Health have been listening to what people have been saying and have taken that on board. And Minister Streeting was very clear about just how bad it is for women's health at the moment, and also that he wants that to change.
You mentioned there the staggeringly long time for diagnosis for endometriosis. More than 9 years and more than 11 for some women. Just explain, for people who don't understand the condition, what the institutional failings are that result in it being such a long time of enduring pain and being sent away before that diagnosis is eventually made, and sometimes it isn't.
Yes, it is, and of course the disease may progress as well while it isn't. I think what happens is, unfortunately, we just don't educate our medics about endometriosis, adenomyosis and menstrual health conditions. So people's pain aren't believed, menstrual conditions like endometriosis are just not recognised, their symptoms aren't. And so we know that people are going again and again with severe symptoms. We're talking levels of pain where people might vomit, they might pass out, they can't get out of bed sometimes, and yet they're still being told that, well, that's just normal and it's in your head. So I think we need to do a lot more to firstly educate our medics coming through, but just say enough is enough, as the Minister did today, and say it just has to change. People have to be believed.
Is there, or what is the evidence that the attitudinal resistance to these diagnoses and to giving women pain relief is different for men when they present with conditions to do with their bodies that cause them pain?
Well, I think I'm sure there's still a lot of conditions that take a while to diagnose for men as well. I think the difference that we feel is that it's specifically around gynecology, women's reproductive, it's often called reproductive health, but anything linked to periods or anything to do with women's health is quite often just brushed under the carpet as well. That's just normal. You're just going to have to get on with it. Everyone else puts up with it. And I think that's what's been difficult.
We don't know what these sweeping changes are going to look like. Typically, sweeping changes move quite slowly, don't they? What would make the biggest difference?
I think the three things that make the biggest difference. Firstly is if doctors recognise the symptoms, thought of the symptoms when they saw them, and then help people get a diagnosis. I think we absolutely need to drive down gynaecology waiting times. They grew the fastest over COVID. They've remained really high, and it's just unacceptable. And as the Minister said, they need to go down quicker than anyone else because they went up quicker. And then I think also providing support to those with endometriosis, or the symptoms, so they know that they should seek help. And those that have been put off because they've been before, maybe been told it's in their head, as a public awareness to make sure they know they should, if they're suffering from severe pain from periods that interfere with day-to-day life, do go and see a doctor.
Is this the most promising move that you've seen from the Health Secretary in terms of addressing these issues? I'm just trying to get underneath how optimistic you are that changes will come into place.
I am an optimist, Samantha, and I am really excited about this because, as I say, it feels like the Department of Health has been listening, taking on board all the quite tough messages that they've been receiving from many hundreds of thousands of women about different conditions. Obviously, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, but I also feel that because there's so much time wasted within the NHS on people having multiple symptoms or going to their GPs multiple times, going to A&E, I think there is some low-hanging fruit, is if there's a way of evening it out so people get the help they need when they do. Actually, it should save time and money in the NHS. There's some really exciting things that, again, have to come to fruition in the next year, but around new NHS Hospital Online, where people can speak to experts within a couple of weeks, so they can get ordered. You know, if they need imaging or scanning, they can have that. They don't have to wait 2 years for someone to say, oh, you need to go for an ultrasound. That can be ordered within a couple of weeks. So I think there's potential. I remain optimistic, but we will remain, Endometriosis UK will remain a critical friend to the government, and we'll say when we think they're doing well, but we'll also say when we think they need to pull their socks up.
Emma, I'm also interested in how easy you think it is to bring about sort of attitudinal change amongst medics who are treating women.
I think, I think it's interesting what they've been saying about actually putting financial targets on this, because they're going to pilot women being able to say whether they think the people they've been seeing should get the payment they should. And I think, money talks. And I think that could be a real way of reminding everyone that they need to be listening to people. I think cultural change is difficult. We know that, doctors really want to help people. They go into medicine trying to help. They want to do that. And I feel like we've just not educated them. So I do think there's maybe something around, is there a way of mandating some very simple, easy access to training around gynecological and menstrual health conditions, so that we're actually helping and supporting our doctors and nurses to recognise the symptoms.
And the sufferers that you know that use your services, what have they had to say about hearing the Health Secretary say what he's said?
I think pleased to hear them say it, but and we do have a lot of, again, people who are very willing to try and be part of the solution. So pleased to hear it said and to have had their voices recognised and reflected, but also very much wanting to see change happen. And I think that at a time of change, there's time of uncertainty, isn't there? And for everyone who's actually on a waiting list and has been for 2 years, who can't get through to the doctor they need to speak to, they want to see change happening as soon as it can.
Emma Cox, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Now, work has begun to remove waste from a giant illegal dump in Oxfordshire. The multi-million-pound clean-up is expected to take 6 months and will be paid for by the taxpayer. The government has announced new funding to try and tackle illegal waste sites across the UK. But will it be enough to stop the booming business for organised criminal gangs? Our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook, reports.
20,000 tonnes of filthy, rotting rubbish. The clean-up has just started. It will take 15 lorries a day until the end of summer and cost the taxpayer £8 million.
It's only when you come to a site like this that you realise quite how disgusting it is. They are huge, they give off the smell of egg, and here they've got one of these machines to try and mask the smell.
There are hundreds of these sites around the country, and the government says it has a national solution, pledging help for landowners to clean up and extra powers and cash for the Environment Agency.
The new funding that you've promised is going to be £15 million a year. but this site alone is going to cost 8 million to clean up, and overall across the country it's costing us $1 billion every year. So this new funding, it's not going to touch the sides, is it?
But we've got to, as the Environment Secretary, I stick by the principle that the polluter should pay. We've got 4 arrests already been made here. The idea is that we reclaim the costs from the criminals, and that's why we've toughened up the penalties.
But the taxpayer is paying for this, £8 million.
But we will recover as much of the cost of that as we possibly can.
Waste crime is seen as the new drug dealing. It's a cash cow for criminal gangs who charge people to take away their waste and then instead of paying to put it in a landfill, dump it illegally. It's seen as low risk and high reward because so far the penalties have been few and far between. We have the police, we have a regulator, and yet this is a booming criminal industry.
That's why we have already increased the capacity of the Environment Agency when it comes to drones, to see from the air what's going on, to try and stop this kind of criminality in its tracks before it gets to this extent.
Because sites like this keep growing despite residents sounding the alarm, and over their complaints seem to fall through the cracks.
Residents get put on a merry-go-round of reporting to different agencies. It's taxpayers who are on the hook for all of this, and they'll want the criminals to be held to account more fully.
Eventually, these fields should turn green again. The Environment Agency says its new technology will help it get ahead of criminal gangs. But with an average of 10 new sites appearing every week, they have a long way to go. Victoria Seabrook, Sky News.
Now, driving schools AA and BSM have been ordered to repay more than £760,000 to customers. That's over a practice which is known as drip pricing. The competition regulator found that more than 80,000 learners were not given the total price of their lessons up front. The AA, which owns both companies, has been fined £4.2 million. Sky's Gareth Barlow spoke to the president of the AA, Edmund King, earlier today.
We inadvertently infringe consumer competition legislation by not showing the £3 booking fee up front. I mean, the booking fee was always there. It was clear when you checked out, but we accept it should also have been up front. So we cooperated with the CMA. We changed the website as soon as we knew. But to put into context, I mean, about 79% of transactions are repeat transactions on the website. So that's people who've booked lessons before and booked them again. And in those transactions, the booking fee is much more upfront. It's just one click in. But yes, we accept it could have been clearer. We've made it clearer. But, you know, there are lots of issues out there for learner drivers that they're probably more concerned about, like waiting 5 months for a driving test because of the backlog, or indeed all the bots online selling driving tests for double the price.
Now, this next story is a bit of a handbrake turn. Backbench MPs campaign on all sorts of issues, don't they? Speed limits, local services, potholes, all very important, but not necessarily headline grabbing. Well, that is certainly not the case with Samantha Niblett's calls for a summer of sex. Pardon, you might say. That's right, summer of sex, with more open, inclusive and lifelong sex education. Her plans, which include promoting sex toys in Parliament, have propelled her from the backbenches to the front pages. She was even raised by Kemi Badenoch in PMQs.
This is a moment of profound national seriousness. And what are they doing? They're promoting sex toys in Parliament. That's what they're doing. Mr. Speaker, it gives a whole new meaning to fiddling while Rome burns.
Good to see they've got a sense of humour. Well, Sky's political correspondent Lucy McDade met Samantha Niblett earlier.
We are seeing such frightening things happening with violence against women and girls, where sex is being used in an oppressive way and as a weapon. And I truly believe that if we can get Britain talking about sex in a way that is not, where we're not embarrassed, where we drag it out from the shadows, that would go a long way towards empowering people so that less sexual violence and oppression happens.
It's grabbed quite a bit of attention, and people have been picking up on you saying orgasm, talking about sex toys, talking about bringing sex toys into Parliament. Was that the purpose, to shock people into listening to what you're saying? Should it be shocking what you're saying?
Well, to your point, the fact that people are shocked and it has caught the headlines kind of goes some way to proving that really we need to be talking about it. It shouldn't be so shocking. And also, if I'm saying, well, we need to take the shame out of sex.
The response has been quite divided. Some people, some women, criticising some of the stuff you've said. In terms of bringing sex toys into Parliament, Lucy Powell, Labour's deputy leader, has said she doesn't think it's the right place for it. Do you think part of the reaction is because you're a woman talking about sex?
I think when it comes to Lucy's comments about having sex toys in Parliament and it's not appropriate, I think context is missing here. The ambition is to have an event in Parliament where we can help break down some barriers, and a key part of that is having sex toys in Parliament.
Kemi Badenoch today in the House of Commons said Labour is promoting sex toys and the government is giving a whole new meaning to fiddling while Rome burns. She was talking about defence spending and accusing the government of focusing on something like this too much. And what should you make of that?
This is a cross-party issue. I was really disappointed to hear her sort of have such a cheap shot when not promoting sex toys. And it just takes away from the seriousness of the campaign and what we're hoping to achieve, which is about empowering people and making people happier. So it just felt like all it did, I think, was prove the case for the need for the campaign.
And do you think, I mean, MPs sometimes get flack. You know, there's a war in Iran at the moment, people talk about the cost of living. Do you think that's fair criticism, or is this, you know, you feel really passionately about this and it's something that you want to talk about?
There will always be things that are happening in the world that are not good, and at the minute it does feel like, you know, it's burning, doesn't it? But people are still going about their day, they are still having sex, they're still wanting to have sex, and again, the most important thing, there are still people that are victims and survivors of sexual assault. And so whilst ever that is the case, I think there's always a case for this campaign.
Well, still to come on the UK tonight. In the sport, we're going to bring you news of a big injury blow for Liverpool as their top scorer is set to be ruled out for the rest of the season.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Inauguration Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
Just before we get to the sport, just an update to bring you from the Met Police in the last few moments. 2 people have now been arrested in connection with an attempted arson attack on a synagogue in Finchley. The incident is being treated as an anti-Semitic hate crime. A 47-year-old woman and a 46-year-old man were both arrested in the Watford area on suspicion of arson endangering life. Well, we can get all the latest sports news now with Jess.
John will, talks about it as the best medical he ever failed. It seems strange you get so far down the line and a player of his calibre, the possibility of signing him, it would have been a massive threat had he signed for Rangers, but thankfully he didn't.
It's very, very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done, but historically Rangers have been stung a couple of times signing players who had glitches, you might say, in America. Famously, Daniel Prodan was one a number of years earlier, but there had been others as well. And I think they'd reached the stage where they weren't going to take any more risk.
And then I failed a medical at Charlton.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. But for the time being, that seems a dead deal.
Been a lot of speculation, and if there was any chance, it would have been done.
Spent the day with Alan Kirbishley, walking around the valley and being in the training ground. And I was training every day. I was scoring goals every weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
I'm not bitter, no, not at all. I'm not a bitter person, I just get on with life. I've got no problems with my knee or nothing, I'm lashing balls in and everything else. And it does get a bit, frustrating at times. People keep going on about medicals and that. So that does.
Now time just to check in on the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the next few days will bring widespread showers or more general rain, but the weekend does look a bit more settled. England and Wales will be mainly fine this evening. Elsewhere, there will be plenty of showers, some heavy and prolonged, the odd rumble of thunder as well. Expect further showers overnight, locally heavy, but southern Britain will remain largely dry inland. It'll remain quite mild and blustery.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
That's all from the UK tonight. Do stay with us. Coming up next, it's The World with Yalda.